Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Eric, your ranting co host here, and we are back with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. Zach, our main host, he's not able to be here today. He was in Jacksonville. He went to the Jags game, and unfortunately, it was another L for us. I know if he was here, I'm sure he'd be upset about it just like I am, but he's driving back home, so he's not here. But we got Connor and Nate here. We're excited to bring you another episode. We're going to be breaking down the teams in the AFC that are fighting for playoff spots. We're going to give our takes on who's in, who's out, so to give you our thoughts on that. Then we will do our usual of previewing three upcoming games for the next week. We'll discuss our lock board. We definitely had some mixed results there, so we'll get to that in a little bit. And then finally, at the end of the show, Connor and I are going to go around the hoop and we are going to break down some NBA contenders and pretenders. So we got a lot to get into here. I hope you guys enjoy it. But for now, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, guys? It's Connor, the co-host with the most. And unlike Zach, I didn't go to a football game. Well, that's not true. I went to a college football game. I went to the UNC-NC State game, and unfortunately that didn't work out for me. NC State came out with a win. Then, I thought maybe, my sports weekend would get better, and I'll make it up and go to a Carolina Hurricanes versus Washington Capitals hockey game. Unfortunately, that also ended up in an L. And then while I was there, I found out that the Steelers got absolutely annihilated by the Bengals. So I've probably had the worst sports week this week. I mean, Zach also had he told me the Lightning ended up losing today. So him and I are kind of sharing some pain this week, but I'm excited to get into this episode. And, at least I got some green on the lock board. I can say that, which Zach, unfortunately for him, can't. So
And what's up, guys? It's Nate here. Kind of had, I guess, for my benefit, the opposite sports weekend as Connor. Went to the UF versus FSU game in Gainesville yesterday, which was a lot of fun. Gators capped off a pretty mediocre season with a win, which is nice. And then my Pats actually pulled out a nice win versus the Titans today, so things are looking up in that respect. So yeah, looking forward to talking about all that more tonight.
FS useless.
Yeah, they lost again. I've got some FSU fans that are friends of mine, so for you guys, I'm sorry, but I'm a Tennessee fan.
But really not sorry.
No, I am. I am. I don't have any hate for Florida State. Now, if it was Florida, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not.
Well, that's all right. That's right. I forgot that you really don't like the Gators. So
yeah, Gators, Alabama. If any of them are doing bad, whatever. But FSU, I don't have anything against them.
Well, hey, at least for you, we can all share in the Alabama doing bad.
Yeah, other than Alabama fans, I don't think anybody likes them. So, but anyway, getting back on topic here, we're going to go around the shield. And as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to break down who we think is in and out for the AFC this week. So we're going to start with the AFC East. And while it's obviously not a guarantee, it's pretty much looking like the divisional race is coming down to the Patriots and the Bills. And we're pairing them together just because we're pretty much assuming at this point that both of these teams are going to get into the playoffs. So what we want to discuss is which team will take away the division, which team will, get that, home playoff matchup, or maybe even possibly get the 1 seed and get the, first round bye. So we didn't talk about this beforehand. So this is going to be total surprise reactions here for all of us to get each other's opinions on it. So I'll go first, and then Connor and Nate, we'll start with who do you think is going to win the division? I'm going to say the Patriots take it. Connor, how about you?
I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
And Nate, I think I know who you're going to pick, but let us know.
Yeah,
just to confirm.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my preseason pick and go with the Pats here.
I'm shocked Nate didn't take the Bills there. That's really what I thought was going to happen.
I mean, I thought Nate was going to say the Jets were going to win the division.
Whoa! Yeah, we could have thrown them in there, but obviously we didn't do that. But so Nate, you're the Pats fan on the podcast. So why do you think the Patriots are going to beat the Bills, and what do you think it's going to take for them to beat the Bills? Just give us your breakdown on this.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting that both neither of these teams have played each other yet. Both these divisional matchups are being saved for the last like 5 weeks of the season, which is kind of weird in itself. But I think the Pats are just playing their best football right now. They're clicking. They went undefeated in November, and their defense is really, I think, stepped up a lot. They're looking really strong, and I think Mac Jones just gets better week in, week out. He's not still, like an elite Pro Bowl type quarterback, but I think he's doing more than enough to like keep the offense rolling. So I think they're a lot more of a match for the Bills than they were, I would say, at the start of the season. Um, I think it's going to come down to basically can they contain Josh Allen and keep him from, um, going too crazy, and can the offense move the ball in the Bills defense, which itself is pretty strong. So I think these are honestly two very like well matched teams. Like I think they're both very balanced, and yeah, I think it's a tough matchup, but I think the Pats right now, just given their history versus the Bills, I'm going to give them the slight edge. Maybe they won't sweep both matchups, but I think end of the season, the Pats are going to have at least a slightly better record there.
All right, so Connor, why are the Bills going to win the division?
For me, it just rests on the offense, I think, because, these are two elite defenses right now. I mean, the Patriots, they're probably the number one defense in the league right now. They've been playing really well. They got a lot of people back. Last year they had like 7 or 8 people that sat out because of COVID. So they got a lot of those pieces back. And they brought in some other pieces in the offseason. They brought in like Matthew Judon to, help shore up that defense. But, they're playing their best football, but the Bills also have a really good defense. That they're, I don't know. Normally we talk about the front 7. I guess their back 7 is probably one of the best in the league. You've got probably the best safety pairing in the league, and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Tre'Davious White, he's been battling through some injuries recently, but he's still a top corner. And then, the linebacking tandem of Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano is one of the best in the league, in my opinion, too. And I think one thing that's really going to hurt both of these teams, honestly, is like I know, Damian Harris has been like decent, but you still don't think really of the Patriots as an offensive, like running the ball team. And that is the Bills' weakness. But, Damian Harris is certainly no Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry, the two running backs that have put up, the biggest numbers against them this year. And if I look at the other side for the Bills and I compare the quarterbacks, I will take Josh Allen in a heartbeat over Mac Jones. I just think that, the Patriots, they're looking like how they used to look all the time, with Brady under. The only difference is that obviously Mac Jones is no Brady, but like it's a lot of guys who maybe you haven't really heard of that much, but they're all kind of coming together. Belichick doing his thing. You need a team. You don't need a bunch of superstars. You just need a team, and that's what they're doing. But I can just, if I look on the other side, like if the Bills, when they get some of these people on their offensive line back, and you look at that receiving trio they have of Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders, like, and especially with Allen at quarterback, it's scary. And, it's almost like sometimes they don't need a run game, even, because Devin Singletary's been a little bit sort of inconsistent this year, but it's more scary to me, in my opinion. I think the Bills, they finally kind of, especially with last year, with Brady gone, they finally got over the hump playing this Patriots team. And I think the Bills are going to do it this year. And, they're really hungry. They came within one game of the Super Bowl last year. And I think they're going to refine that mojo and take it at the end of the year.
All right, guys. Yeah, you definitely both brought up great points there. I'm going with New England, though. Like I said, I'm agreeing with Nate here just because of how well New England has been playing. Like they have their chemistry. It seems like they're playing so consistent right now. And they, to me, seem like they could be a Super Bowl contender. Even though, like Connor said, it seems like their offense, especially, is just kind of a bunch of guys, but it's working. Belichick is doing his thing, and I don't know, man. It's hard for me to pick anybody against them. I went with Cleveland to beat them recently, and New England beat them. I went with the Chargers to beat them recently, and New England beat them. It's not like New England's beating up on only teams like the Jets and Texans and Jaguars or something. I mean, they're while they're they beat the Jets, but they're beating good teams too, and they're very impressive. My problem with the Bills is just they've been inconsistent lately. Like one week they're blowing out the Saints, and then the next week they're losing to the Jaguars, and then one week they blow out somebody else, and then they get blown out by the Colts. I don't. My problem is I just don't know which Bills team is going to show up. Whereas with the Patriots, I seem to trust them more right now. But obviously, that's a toss up. I mean, it could definitely go either way. I would be curious to see what Zach's opinion would be if he was here. But so we're going to move on to the AFC North. We're going to do a similar deal like we did with the East here. We're pretty much assuming the Ravens and Bengals are both going to be in. As of the time of we're recording this right now, the Ravens are playing the Browns on Sunday Night Football. I'm not sure what the score is there, but
the Ravens are up in a very boring 6-3 first half.
Wow,
the first half isn't over, but there's a minute left.
That's some man. I'd much rather be watching that right now than doing this. I'm just kidding. No, definitely glad I'm doing this. But so we've got another close division race here, but we're pretty much assuming both the Ravens and Bengals are going to be in. So we're going to do like we did here with the Patriots and Bills, and just first give who we think is going to win the division. I'm going to go with the Bengals. Connor, how about you?
I am going to agree and go with the Cincinnati Bengals.
And Nate, how about you?
I don't want to be boring here, but I'm also going to take the Bengals.
All right, so we're in a unanimous agreement here, but I guess I will play a devil's advocate for the Ravens, even though I don't necessarily think they will. Kind of like I talked about with the Bills and inconsistency and everything, I have the same issue with the Ravens. I mean, one week they look like a Super Bowl contender and they're dominating, and then the next week they're getting blown out, and then this week right now it's almost halftime and they only have their defense is doing good, but they only have 6 points. Which Lamar Jackson team are we going to get? Which offensive team are we going to get with the Ravens? What's their defense going to be like? It's almost like you don't know. But the Bengals have their struggles, but they've just been hot. That's why I'm picking them. But for the Ravens, if they're going to do this, I almost started making a case for the Bengals there. It's like, I got to switch back to the Ravens. I'm playing devil's advocate. If the Ravens are going to win this division, Lamar Jackson has to step up and play like he was doing at times earlier in the season. Like when they had that comeback win against the Colts, the way he lit them up, he has to be like that, because the rest of the offense isn't the greatest. They're, as Connor talks about, their running back core is basically a retirement home. And other outside.
No Le'Veon Bell anymore, though. They cut him.
Well, yeah, so it's a little bit less of a retirement home. But so maybe they'll pick up Adrian Peterson now that he's available. I don't know. But I don't know. But outside of Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, their weapons just don't really scare people. So Lamar has to find a way to do it on his own. The defense is good enough, I think, for them, but that Lamar Jackson's going to be the key. And they are in first place right now. So they do have the edge there, but I don't know, we'll see. But so Connor, tell us why Cincinnati is going to overtake the Ravens and get first place.
Yeah, for me, I think you hit on it with the Baltimore Ravens, like just the inconsistencies. I mean, like this team right now is just, I don't know. We kind of talk about, when we go back to a couple seasons ago when the Packers were like in first place and the North and ended up getting like a 2 seed is 13-3, and they were like one of the worst 13-3 teams we'd seen. Like if the Ravens win tonight, they're going to be like the worst 8-3 team I've seen. Like they're a very, they're looking very sus right now. Like I know you talk about Lamar Jackson, like it has to come down to him. Well, the Browns got a field goal and then Lamar Jackson just threw his second interception of the night. The Ravens did just get a fumble recovery. So like, this is definitely a defensive heavy game, but you're right about their offense. Like even Marquise Brown, like you mentioned him, he doesn't scare me at all either. Like he seems to be a drop machine most of the time. And, I think he's just one of those players that gets a lot of, he seems like not quite as bad as this guy, but like he seems like the Ravens version of Odell Beckham Jr. Like a lot of hype and not really many results. And for me, the Bengals, they're just like they've turned it around. You know, they got out of that slump where they lost to the Jets and got blown out by the Browns. You know, they came back, they dismantled the Raiders, they dismantled the Steelers. You know, and part of that is that Joe Burrow is getting a lot of help from Joe Mixon. And, you know, Mixon's rushed for over 100 yards in 2 straight weeks. He's gotten 2 touchdowns in 2 straight weeks. And, you know, this Bengals offense is clicking again. And Joe Burrow, you know, they've gotten T. Higgins back from injury. He's starting to form a bond with him. You know, he's obviously already got the connection with Jamar Chase, being that they were LSU buddies. And, you know, the Bengals, I think the other thing that I have to take into account is that the Bengals, they already earlier this season blew out the Ravens in Baltimore. And the game that they have left, obviously, is going to be in Cincinnati. So if they already blew out Baltimore in Baltimore, then I'm not hopeful for the Ravens about what's going to happen, you know, when they go to Cincinnati. And also, like I said, the Ravens, I just don't think they can. I don't think Lamar Jackson can do it all by himself. You know, the team, honestly, these teams are trending in different directions. The Ravens seem like they're trending down, and the Bengals are trending up. So, and also I think the Bengals are going to benefit from, you know, a little bit of both of these teams have like somewhat difficult schedules left, but the Bengals I think have a slightly easier one just because of the fact that they finished last in the division last year, so they don't have to like the Ravens still have to play the Packers and the Rams, and obviously, you know, they still have to play the Steelers, which even though the Steelers aren't, you know, fantastic this year, you know, those games are always close. Whereas, like, instead of getting the Packers and the Rams, the Bengals get to play, like, the 49ers and the Broncos. So, but even though they have to play the Chiefs, too. So, but I just think the Bengals are trending up right now. I don't see any reason why they don't get this win in the division.
Yeah, I like your thoughts on that, and I hope it happens. I'm cool with the Bengals, so I'd be cool if they take it and maybe they can finally get a playoff win for the first time in forever. So,
I don't know. This is unfortunately a lose-lose situation for me.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like I guess if I had to pick, honestly, if I had to pick out of all the other teams, I would wish it would be the Browns, but you know, my lowest would definitely be the Ravens. So go Bengals.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. I was wondering if you were just gonna go straight into making an argument why the Steelers are going to come back, and it's not going to be the Bengals or the Ravens.
No, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. They started to look better, but now they're starting to look like they're really crappy selves again. So,
for sure, man, for sure. So those are going to be we're obviously we don't have the Chiefs and Titans on here just because we're assuming that they're going to win their divisions. So with the Chiefs, Titans, Pats, Bills, Ravens, Bengals, those are our consensus top 6 teams. But now we have to figure out of all these other teams that are, you know, quote, in the hunt, which of these teams could get the 7th spot and what is it going to take for them to get there. So I'm not going to say all their records because they're all within a game of each other, but we've got on the screen here, we've got the Chargers, the Browns, the
Browns who just picked off Lamar Jackson for the 3rd time.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad I'm safe in fantasy this week because my goodness, Lamar, you're killing me otherwise. But anyway, that's good to know. So the Raiders, the Colts, the Broncos, and the Dolphins. And it's interesting just going into this because I feel like with all of these teams, you know, you could make a case why any of them could get in, but you could also make a case of why they won't get in. With all of these teams I mentioned, they've all had times where they've looked hot and they've had times where they were not, and it's really tough to say. Like, it's really anyone's guess, but we've all picked the team out of this list that we think is going to get in. So Nate, I'll start with you. Give us your team that's getting in and what is it going to take for them to get there?
Yeah, so my team I'm picking is the Raiders. They're right on the bubble there in the AFC West, which is pretty crowded. At the moment, the Chargers and the Broncos are also up there. They're all really close in record, but I just think that the Raiders this season are playing at a slightly higher level than those other teams. I think they lost to the Chargers in their first matchup, but in my opinion, they're just starting to click a little bit more than they were then. They got through the whole up and downs of the John Gruden situation. And I think they're, from what I can tell, it seems like they're under control there. They beat the Cowboys in an overtime game on Thanksgiving a few days ago, which I think for me was a pretty big win given how the Cowboys have looked. Just to keep up with them on offense was pretty huge, I think. I think Derek Carr is probably having the best season of his career, at least in my opinion. And I think they're going to need him to keep playing well to get into the playoffs. But I think out of those three teams out west, I think they can um, um, escape out of that division, take the seventh spot there.
I got you, man. And I guess real quick question too: if the Raiders do get in, I mean, obviously we don't know if they get in the seventh seed. We're not going to know who they would play, but do you think the Raiders would have a chance to potentially steal a first round playoff game, or do you think they're going to be a first round exit?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet like my life savings on it, but if they snuck into the seventh seed, I definitely think they could. They have enough talent to, I think, beat not necessarily any team, but I think they have enough talent to win a win or go home situation there. I think offensively they're starting to click a little bit. They put up like 30 some points versus the Cowboys. And granted, the Cowboys don't have the best defense in the world, but I mean, I think they're uh, they can do enough on both sides of the ball to really compete with most teams. So I think if out of the teams that we have pictured up here, I think if they got in, they'd be the one I'd be most comfortable with them stealing a first round upset, just in my opinion.
All right, so if the Raiders do get in and manage to pull that off, I'm coming back to this saying that was a great moment for Nate there. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. So Nate has the Raiders. Connor, give us your team. Just go ahead and say it. The Steelers. Just go
No, unfortunately, not going to be biased in this segment. Because honestly, like with the way we've been performing, out of all of these 7 teams, I'd say the Steelers are probably the least likely to make the playoffs. So, but no, I'm going to go with the Raiders as counterparts in the West, the Los Angeles Chargers. And for me, it just comes down to like all these teams, like this has kind of been a theme. All these teams have been wildly inconsistent, and the AFC is really just a crapshoot. And so to me, I just have to go with which team I feel like has the best players left and the best playmakers. And to me, that easily has to be the Chargers. Like Justin Herbert, in my opinion, is the best quarterback on all these teams. He's had his struggles, but when he's playing the way he can, like he's the best quarterback. Like he's better than Baker. He's better than Derek Carr. He's better than, Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Wentz. I mean, like Carson Wentz, Teddy Bridgewater, and Tua are like, they're them. So, but also, they have a really great, fantastic running back in Austin Eckler. He's one of the best dual threat running backs in the league. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are a great receiving tandem. And I think one thing that a lot of people have kind of overlooked with the Chargers is that they finally kind of figured out their offensive line issues. Like Rashawn Slater has definitely been one of the picks of, this past draft that has really shined. All the hype and all the, grandeur was around Penei Sewell in this past draft. And while he did get picked up by the Lions, so, I don't want to give him too much hate for that because the Lions are the Lions. But, Slater has definitely outperformed him this year. And he's really made a difference for Justin Herbert. He's not had to, stress and be under pressure every 5 seconds. He can really take his time and find, people downfield and make good decisions. Obviously, the little bit sus part of this team is their defense. But they've been performing well. They've been getting to the quarterback. Joey Bosa is having a decent year. And, I think their defense is just good enough for them to, hold up behind their offense and really take it. Their offense is one of those offenses that can easily put up 40 points. So as long as you can hold the opponent to under 20, 25, which for the most part they've been doing, then they definitely have a chance to win. So, and also, I guess I'll go ahead and answer your question. You asked Nate if you think the Raiders
I was going to ask you that too.
Can pull off first round upset. I definitely think the Chargers can. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I could see any of these teams doing that. Just the AFC is so wide open still. Like I was hoping that maybe it would stabilize later in the year, and it's just gotten even muddier. Like You know, the NFC, like we've mentioned so often, the NFC is so top heavy. I mean, there's like 5 teams in the NFC right now that are at the top and are for sure going to make the playoffs, like regardless of what happens pretty much. Whereas the AFC, I mean, that's the funny thing. We talk about that. We just assume that the Patriots and the Chiefs and the Titans and all these teams are going to make it. But like in reality, there's a chance they won't. So I could definitely see the Chargers pulling off a first round upset going into somewhere like Tennessee or going into Foxborough or somewhere like that and pulling off an upset.
Yeah, you're definitely right about the AFC being wide open. And it seems like there's always at least one conference that's at least somewhat wide open every year. But I feel like this is the most wide open a conference has been in a really long time. I mean, the fact that we're, discussing like 6, 8, 10, 12, like including the Titans and Chiefs, like 13 teams in the conference that we're still discussing that could possibly get in.
Out of
And
the 16.
And then even the fact that there's teams at the top that could still possibly not get in if they go on a losing streak or something. I mean, you never know. This is crazy, but we're doing our best to make our predictions here. That this is definitely going to be a fun one to look back on and see like what we get right or what we get wrong and stuff like that. But
sorry, Jets, Texans, and Jaguars.
yeah, well, the Jaguars. Hey, in '96 we were 3-7 and we won 6 in a row to make the playoffs. So you never know. There's hope. Okay,
it's a little bit different from 2-9.
Yeah, no, we're not making it. But hey, I can still relive memories from that long ago. But anyway, I will give my team, and if you thought Connor was not being biased by choosing a team that wasn't the Steelers, then you definitely know that I'm not being biased by picking my divisional rival, the Colts. I know last week for the Thanksgiving special, I compared them to a dinner roll. But these last couple of weeks have been what's made me a believer in the Colts, because the thing about like the teams that Nate and Connor picked, well, I can definitely see both of them getting it. Those are more so teams that started off pretty hot, but then now they've kind of cooled down and been a little more inconsistent. But with the Colts, they started off pretty bad. They were looking kind of like they might be down in the bottom of the cellar with the Texans and the Jags, and the Titans would just run away with it. But they've been on a roll here lately. I mean, obviously, beating the Jets and the Jags isn't, pretty basically everybody does that. But the way they beat the Bills last week in such a dominating fashion, who's, looking like a top tier contender for the AFC. And then they really should have beaten the Bucks today, but, they just had some unfortunate things that didn't go their way. And so they could have won that game. That would have been 2 really big wins back to back. So I'm not going to hold that loss against the Bucks against them. And they have a somewhat easy schedule left compared to the rest of these teams, since they get the Jags and Texans again. I mean, those should be pretty much walks in the parks for them. I mean, I know the Jags always seem to beat the Colts when they're at home, but the Colts are on a playoff mission this year, so I just don't think that's going to happen unless
this isn't week 1 like it was last year.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times we get them at home on the final week of the season, but a lot of times, the Colts are like 6-9 and we're 4-10, and the game doesn't really mean anything. But it's going to mean a lot more for the Colts this year, barring a crazy losing streak, which I don't think will happen. So they have some tough matchups too, but I think they're going to be able to do just enough to get in. And depending on who they play, I do think they could get a first round upset, which obviously I don't want that to happen, but yeah, I could definitely see it happen. So those are our picks. Zach's not here with us, but if he was here, I'm sure he would pick the Browns.
Shocker.
I'm sure that would be his pick. Zach, you can let us know after you listen to this. Let us know if we got that right. Let us know who your pick would be. And if you're listening to this right now, if you want to leave a comment, I mean, let us know, like, out of these teams, who do you think's in? Who do you think's out? We'd love to discuss it with you guys. I think it'd be a fun topic. So definitely do that. We're going to move on now to our upcoming weekly picks. And I'm going to start here with the Thursday night game. We've got the Cowboys going on the road to the Saints. Both of these teams played on Thanksgiving. They both have losses. The Cowboys had a close loss to the Raiders. The Saints got blown out by the Bills. But this is definitely an important game because while Dallas should probably be fine in the NFC East just because of how bad the rest of the teams are. Dallas really,
their main competition, like, blew a chance to get back in it by losing to the Giants today.
Yeah, exactly. So the Cowboys should be fine in that regard, but they have lost 3 out of their last 4 games. They definitely want to make a statement and show that they're still a contender, and and they're still fighting for playoff seeding. I'd say with them losing the Raiders, their chances of getting the number 1 seed are definitely a lot lower now, but it is still possible. So they're definitely going to want to win this game. And the Saints, they've been struggling. Their season's definitely slipping away. Their shot at the playoffs is getting pretty slim. So if they want to have any chance of getting back into the hunt for the playoffs, they really need to win this game. So they're at home, which gives them an advantage. But I have to go with the Cowboys, though, not just because they're Susan's team. I really do think Dallas will win this game. I want to ask Connor or Nate, if either of you want to answer this. I don't know if you know why or why not, but in my opinion, if I was the Saints, I would be throwing Taysom Hill out there at quarterback. I mean, that's who they went with last year. When called upon, even over Jameis Winston, who ended up being the starter this year. So I'm not really. I know when Trevor Siemian first came in, Taysom Hill was hurt at that time, but Taysom Hill is healthy now. So I've been kind of surprised they haven't rolled with him. Do either of you know why they're not doing that, or would you still start Siemian? I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on this.
I don't personally know. I know at the beginning it was because Taysom was hurt, like he wasn't 100%, but like I said, now he is. So I don't know why they're not. I mean, I would totally do it, like you said, because he was like 3-1 last year as their starter while Breeze was out. So
Nate, have you heard anything about this?
I personally haven't followed it too closely now, but I feel like he's got more upside than Siemian, but yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, just with the dual threat ability alone, I mean, gives you much more of an advantage. And I don't think Simeon's that much better of a passer than Hill, but what do I know? But so with that being said, I'm gonna take the Cowboys here. I do, as long as Simeon's starting, I think the Cowboys will win pretty easily. I'm gonna say they win 27-13. What about you, Connor?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree and go with the Cowboys. I think the other thing that's really been holding the Saints back recently, though, is the fact that Alvin Kamara has been hurt. I know he's missed like the past 3 games or something like that, which is weird because it seemed like what he had was going to be like a minor injury, but, but then now it's like 3 games in a row that he's missed. I know like this last one was because like Thanksgiving, short turnaround. So we'll see if he comes back. If he is back, then I think the Saints will definitely like have a better chance because, obviously when you don't have Alvin Kamara on that offense, like especially with Michael Thomas being, that he hasn't played and he's not gonna play for the rest of the year. It's like when you've got someone like Mark Ingram or Tony Jones back there, it's not going to help your chances at all with Simeon at quarterback. So. I would give the Saints a little bit better chance if Kamara plays, but regardless of whether he plays or not, I still think the Cowboys take this. I just don't think the Saints defense is going to be able to hold up long enough for it's going to remind it's probably going to be reminiscent to me of the Auburn Alabama game this past week where like Auburn's defense held up for as long as they could when their offense wasn't doing anything, but in the end Alabama got past them, and I think that's what's going to happen here with the Cowboys and the Saints. So I'm going to take the Cowboys winning this game. I'm going to say 24-20. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, I almost have exactly the same sentiment there. I just think that the Saints don't have enough on offense to, even if Kamara plays, I still don't think they have enough to keep up with what the Cowboys can do. And their defense should keep them in it, should keep it close, but I still think I'm going to go with Cowboys. I'm going to go Cowboys 27, Saints 17.
Gotcha, man. And now we have an always classic AFC North thriller here involving Connor's team. Connor, take this one away.
Yeah, the best rivalry in the NFL. Eat your heart out, Packers and Bears. The Steelers and Ravens playing for the first time. This is kind of like the Bills and Patriots where like they've been saving these games for the end of the season, which is kind of interesting. But this is going to be the first one in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. And both of these teams have been looking wildly inconsistent recently. The Steelers obviously got blown out by the Bengals today after a pretty close loss to the Chargers, where they, surprisingly enough, their offense actually put up over 30 points and got them back in the game, which was really surprising. But they've just kind of been on a slump. They went through that stretch of a 4-game win streak where, they beat the Browns in Cleveland, and then they won that close one against the Bears. But then really that tie against Detroit and that kind of monsoon-like weather up in Pittsburgh, where they really should have won that game on a bunch of blown opportunities, it's really kind of set them back. Like I said, they had the loss to the Chargers and then obviously getting blown out by the Bengals today. But, it's not like the Ravens are in a much better boat at the moment. They got blown out by the Bengals, then really should have lost to the Vikings in a close one there, lost to the Dolphins somehow, and, only barely I know Lamar Jackson didn't play, but only barely managed to beat Chicago, and, only up 6-3 on Cleveland right now with Lamar Jackson already having 3 interceptions at halftime. So it's going to be a very defensive-minded game. I know the Steelers had trouble stopping Joe Mixon today, but I think the difference between the Bengals and the Ravens is that with the Bengals, you actually have to respect both. You have to respect Burrow and you have to respect Mixon. They have that balanced offense. Whereas with the Ravens, it's really just stop the run. So they can focus all their attention there. And I think it's going to be, as with most Steelers games, it's going to be low scoring, in my opinion. But I do think the Steelers, being at home, are going to get this back on track, at least for this week, and beat their bitter rival. I'm going to say that they win 20-16. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I actually agree here, and I'm going to take the Steelers. I don't know, man. I can't trust the Ravens right now, so especially with just as inconsistent as Lamar Jackson has been. I just have trouble trusting them. I know the Steelers have had their struggles right now as well, but I think after that shellacking they took today against the Bengals, I really think it's going to motivate them. And even if they don't, they still have a chance at the playoffs, but even if they're not going to make the playoffs, they would love to do everything they can to keep a rival from getting in. And especially just with the way the Ravens are playing right now against the Browns, I just don't know if I can trust them. I think the Steelers are going to bounce back here. And I agree with Connor. It's going to be low scoring. I'm going to go Steelers 17-14 with a last-second field goal to take it. So, Nate, what about
Boswell?
You? Yeah, not Justin Tucker. It's going to be Boswell.
Well, hey, this is definitely one of those kicker matchups where actually you feel comfortable with either kicker. That's a rare thing in the NFL.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So, Nate, what about you, man? Who do you think's taking this one?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it's going to be a pretty close, low-scoring game. I also don't necessarily trust the Ravens a whole lot right now. I think until they, the way they're looking tonight, especially versus the Browns, doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence. And I know the Steelers got blown out, but I think they're going to bounce back. And I'm going to go Steelers 20, Ravens 17 in a low-scoring game.
Gotcha. Yes, we've all been in agreement so far. It's kind of surprising. Usually we have at least some disagreement, but we still have one more game left. Obviously, it's going to be the most exciting game on the schedule. Jaguars Rams. So we've talked about these two teams a good amount so far, but obviously this is going to be a big matchup here, probably the game of the week. Nate, I'm going to let you take this one over.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on this one a little bit earlier with the playoff situation. But yeah, this is a very interesting matchup. The Pats are leading the conference with the record. The Bills are right up there with them. So this game and then the second matchup later in the season at Foxborough will be a huge impact on the final playoff standings. I think this is probably the biggest test for the Pats so far. And that they played the Buccaneers, but that was early in the season. I don't think the team had completely gelled together yet. I think this is the best team that the Pats will have faced since that game by a pretty solid margin. And for the Bills, they've been playing some solid competition too. But I think, it'll be a good test to see if the Pats are for real and really how this division is going to shake out. I think I'm going to try and obviously be unbiased here, being I'm a Pats fan, but I just think that given the history between these two teams, I know it's a different season, totally different roster, but I think Belichick has only lost against the Bills like 5 or 6 times in his entire 20 plus year, 10-year in New England. So I just have to think that given the history, given the way the Pats are clicking right now, when undefeated in November, I'm going to give them the edge here. Even though it's at Buffalo, that's the only thing that really gives me pause. That's definitely a tough place to play, especially on Monday night there. So I'm thinking it's going to be a close defensive game. I'm going to go with I'm going to go New England 24, Buffalo 21. I think it's going to come down right down to the end there with those two defenses.
Yeah, and shockingly enough, since I agreed with Nate on the decision of who I think will win the AFC East, I'm also going to pick the Patriots here. I do think it'll be a close game for sure. You know, like Nate said, I have pause with it being in Buffalo, and Buffalo's also had longer rest since they played on Thanksgiving, and they've had a couple more days to rest and prepare. But I still am going to go with New England though. Like Buffalo right now has been really hot or cold, and then this last week it's almost literally been like hot, cold these last like 5 or 6 weeks. So they had a hot week this last week, so I think they're going to cool back down now. And I really think the Patriots are going to, especially since the Bills' run game is so bad, I think they're going to be able to really key in on the passing game enough to make a difference here. So I'm going to go Patriots. Let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm going to go Patriots 27-23. Connor, I think I know who you're going to pick, but let us know here.
Well, shockingly enough, since I disagreed with y'all on that, I'm going to disagree here and go with the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, like I said, I just think this offense, it's going to click back together. They're going to be able to find it. And also, it's in Buffalo. I mean, it's really hard for me to pick against the Bills when they're playing in Buffalo. It's like even when they were a bad team, like they were still tough to play in Buffalo. So, I think Josh Allen gets it together. I think he throws for 3 touchdowns on this Patriots defense. And I'm going to say Bills win. I think it's going to be a little higher scoring just because, I think the Bills' offense is good enough to get around this defense. And I think the Patriots' offense is better than a lot of people give it credit for. So I'm going to go Bills win 35-30.
Oh, going with a shootout there. I like it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So next, we're going to go to the lock board, and we definitely had mixed results, as I alluded to. Connor and I had pretty good weeks. Connor got a 5-pointer right and got 5 points, and I actually had a perfect week, although all of mine were only 2-pointers, so it wasn't exactly like a crazy impressive perfect week per se. But at the same time, I got 6 points, which was the most for the week, so obviously I'm happy about that. Zach and Nate, unfortunately for them, on the other hand, both had 0 this week. So looking at the overall standings here, I remain in first with 47. Zach, despite the 0, is still in second at 38. And then Connor, with his 5-pointer, moves to third place with 37, just right behind Zach. And then Nate, while he's in last, he's still right in the thick of it at 34. So I have a little bit of a slight separation, I'll call this, but it's still definitely anybody's game. So we'll recap the picks here. I'm going to start with Zach since he's not here. His first pick was definitely his closest one, and at several times I thought he was going to get this, was Oklahoma over Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State managed to make a late rally and get the lead, and Oklahoma tried to get a game-winning touchdown at the end, but came up just short. So I don't know.
Oklahoma State.
I don't know if Connor and Nate were watching that game, but I was, and I know I had a nice sigh of relief when it was over. Did either of y'all watch that game?
I actually didn't because I think I was just so worn. I was doing some other stuff last night, so I watched kind of like the earlier games, but I didn't watch that game. So, but I'm thankful for Oklahoma State because also, well, not just because of that, but also because I want them to make the college football playoff and hopefully knock Alabama out if they lose to
would,
Georgia. So
that would be dope with me. Nate, did you get to see that game at all or no?
I watched a little bit of the first half. I didn't watch the ending. I was kind of worn out after that Bama game.
Yeah,
I think that might have been the other thing for me too. Like I was just like after that Bama Auburn game, I was like, oh, man,
you were done.
Yep.
See, I had that advantage too, being on the central time zone. I'm an hour earlier than y'all, so it's not as late for me when some of these games end as well. But anyway, back to Zach. This one, I know the second game I know definitely hurt him the most because it was the Jaguars over the Falcons. And the Jaguars really could have won that game. They had just a lot of dumb mistakes. I felt like both teams played each other pretty equally, but it was the Jaguars' dumb mistakes that cost them the game. So he didn't get that one. And then finally, he had Tennessee over New England. He went little balls to the wall there for a 5-pointer. And unfortunately, he was not able to get that one. I know Nate was especially happy about that one, being a Patriots fan. And since I hate the Titans, I was okay with it too. So unfortunately, a 0 for Zach there. Like I said earlier, he's still in second. So he's still got plenty of time. But Connor, give us your picks and let us know how you did.
Yeah, it's funny because Eric talks about that he has created a little bit of separation when it's funny because even though right now he's 9 points in the lead over second place, he very could have easily only been 2 points ahead of second place because I almost nearly put together a 13-point week with these 3 picks. And so
Nate, Zach, and I are glad you didn't.
So start with obviously my first pick, the one I got right. I went with the Michigan Wolverines over the Ohio State Buckeyes. It went really bad for me last week when I took Michigan State to beat them, but I figured, I'll take another swing at it, especially given that this time, it was going to be a road game for Ohio State. Last time they were at home against Michigan State. This time they were going to have to go into Ann Arbor. And Michigan, I thought, just had a lot of extra desire to win this game, not just because they, with a win, they could, potentially get in the college football playoff. I mean, if they do, well, they will get in the college football playoff if they beat Iowa next week. Like, I don't think there's any question about that. But especially just because, Jim Harbaugh, he's 0-5. He was 0-5 against Ohio State in his career. And this game was going to be in Michigan. Like, they wanted, and Ohio State had won the last 8 games. Like, it was just all the pieces were there for Michigan to finally end this streak. And they did in pretty impressive style. They ran for almost 300 yards against, this Ohio State defense, which never happens. So they definitely did it in a way that I don't think anyone expected, but they did it. And so that got me 5 points. Then, unfortunately for me, kind of like what hurt Zach the most, this hurt me the most. I took the Tar Heels over the NC State Wolfpack, and the Tar Heels kind of blew that game in a very Atlanta Falcons-esque way. Where
it's a good comparison.
Yeah, where they were up by 9 with 2 minutes and 8 seconds left or something like that, and Devin Leary got sacked, and a lot of the NC State fans started to get up and leave the game. But then someone in the UNC secondary totally just blew a coverage, and Emeka Mezi came open for a 70-yard touchdown. So that got NC State right back in it, down by 2, and then they recovered the onside kick. And then UNC got a roughing the passer and a pass interference. So that was 30 free yards they gave NC State. And then unfortunately on the game-winning touchdown, if the UNC defender had timed his jump a half second later, he would have intercepted that pass. But he jumped a half second too early, and Emeka Mezi was able to outmuscle him for the ball. So that was really unfortunate. Missed out on 3 points there. And then USC over BYU was my last pick, which I'm wishing I would have taken Minnesota over Wisconsin ahead of that instead, but USC was down really big, but managed to come back and take the lead late in the game. But unfortunately, BYU went on a game-winning touchdown drive to spoil that for me as well. So, happy for the 5 points, but, I just sit and wonder what could have been for that. Unfortunately, that would have been the week of the week of the entire Lockboard's history if I would have gotten all those picks right.
Yeah. I will say too, man, that USC BYU game stressed me out so hard because I started watching that when BYU was up, and I was like, okay, they got this. But then USC scored, and it was getting pretty late. But I was like, I can't go to bed now because I'm going to wonder all night who won this game, and I'm not going to go to sleep. So I'm like, let me just watch it. And it literally came down to the last second. I think I stayed up till like 1:15 in the morning, my time, watching this game. It was ridiculous, but that was my biggest sigh of relief. So I was like, Connor already got 1 5-pointer with a Michigan game. I'm like, he cannot get this. So I was stressing, but thankfully for the rest of us, that didn't happen. Although that would have definitely been nice for Connor. But Nate, I know you're excited to talk about your lock board, so let us know what happened, man.
Yeah,
What went
definitely.
wrong
Yeah, so like Zach, I went 0-3 this week. My first pick was actually one I was most confident in, and it was probably the most wrong. It was Pittsburgh over Cincinnati for 3 points.
I would have been happy if you had gotten that.
Right.
I was just about to say, Connor, would you have been happy or mad if you got that?
See, I would have been happy for him since he and I were like in the same part of the lock board. Like if you had picked it and got it right, I probably wouldn't have been as happy. But since it was Nate and
Makes
we're both
sense.
kind of hovering around that same spot, I would have been happy.
Yeah.
I still would have been happy, but I would have been more happy than I would have if like you had picked it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so obviously Pittsburgh got steamrolled today. I didn't see that coming. I don't think any of us saw it coming. I think they could have lost, but I didn't see them losing that badly, which was kind of a bummer. But then I picked Minnesota over 49ers, which I didn't watch too much of that game, but I just thought it was like a 2-pointer close spread. I thought the Vikings could probably pull it off, but I think Dalvin Cook got hurt and some stuff went wrong for them. So that was another L there. And then I picked Missouri over Arkansas. I think that was down low on my pick list. There wasn't a whole lot that I liked this week. I just went for a 5-pointer, and I honestly didn't watch any of this game. I don't even know what the
Arkansas pretty much manhandled them is what happened. Like
okay.
Yeah, I think it was like 30-16 or something.
Well, it was the final score was 34-17. Like,
30,
but Arkansas was up 34-9, and then Missouri got like a garbage time touchdown with like a minute left. So Arkansas pretty easily steamrolled them.
Yeah, so that was kind of just my flyer for trying to get a steal 5 points there, and didn't really work out. But not the best week, but I'm hoping always next week. Not as many college games to pick from, obviously, but hoping to find some good opportunities there.
I was gonna say that clearly none of us thought about Minnesota over Wisconsin or North Texas over UTSA because those were 5 points.
Yeah, there were
nice
5-pointers left on the board this week. But I was going to say, Nate, since there's getting to where there's not going to be as many college games, are we going to see you dip into the NBA pool anytime soon?
I might have to start looking at that. Yeah, I contemplated this week, but I was like, I'll hold off there.
Don't worry. There's at least 11 college games next week still, so you'll still get to do that next week.
Right.
For sure. So getting kind of late in the podcast here, so I'll go through mine pretty quickly. I wanted to, since I had the last pick, there weren't a lot of big upsets that I felt comfortable with, so I did a lot of 2-pointers at the top of my board before I started making higher picks, and I didn't think I'd get all 3 of these, but I was fortunate enough to get them because really I think every pick on my list that I had like after these 3 picks I think would have been wrong if I had gotten them, because a lot of them are on this list right now. So I was happy to get the ones I got. I went with Michigan State over Penn State. I did not know going into the game that apparently Michigan State had a bunch of players out with a stomach bug. That made me a little more nervous after picking it, but I had a weird moment with that game because I was at work, and every time I had a little break, like I was watching and Michigan State would do good. And then when I had to go work, like Penn State would do good. And it was kind of really, every time I was watching or not watching it, it was just really weird. It affected how the game was going somehow. Like I'm normally not superstitious with that, but it worked for me that time. Luckily I watched more than I didn't. So Michigan State got the win. That was a really weird game for me watching that. But I got that one, and then I went with Atlanta over Memphis in the NBA, and Atlanta had been pretty hot, so I felt pretty confident picking them. Even though it was only 1 point, I was surprised Memphis was favored in that game, but John Morant got hurt in that game, so Atlanta ended up beating them pretty easily. And then in the NFL, I took the Packers over the Rams. The Rams were like 1-point favorite. I took that with it being a pick'em game in Lambeau. I felt pretty confident about that one as well. So got 6 points there, and the draft order next week will be Nate going first, even though him and Zach both had 0 since Nate had the later pick this time. By tiebreaker, Nate gets the first pick. So Zach will have the second pick. Connor will have the third pick, and then I will be fourth again. And I think this is the first time I had the fourth pick where I didn't get a 0 and be back at pick number 1. So I'm glad to stay at the bottom of the draft board.
Start going on a Zach run here, maybe,
yeah,
for you.
Yeah, so for sure, I'd love to have a nice Zach run here and have like 3 or 4 weeks staying at picking pick number 4. So. But anyway, we're going to transition over here to the NBA soon, but I know Nate is going to dip out. Nate, do you have any final words for the viewers?
Yeah, not too much. Just glad to be back in the episode. It's been a couple weeks that I haven't been in, so had a great time talking to you guys, and looking forward to talking about all the championships in college football and all that going on next week. So. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Lots of college football next week.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, glad to have you back, man, for sure. So hopefully I guess it's probably been a little bit now since all 4 of us have been on. Maybe all 4 of us will be back next week. So, but yeah, so Nate, good to see you, man. Have a great night. And for Connor and I, we're gonna go around the hoop now. We've just got a few NBA teams here. We're about a fourth of the way through the season, so. We've got 5 teams here to look at, and we're going to discuss if we think they're contender or pretender. I meant to actually have Connor, you and my pictures on here, and we'd like drag them or whatever. But as we go through each team, I guess just move it up to the top, and then if we have a consensus agreement, we'll move them over. I guess is how we'll do this. So we're going to start in the Eastern Conference because there's definitely some surprising teams right now. That are definitely overperforming compared to preseason projections. So I just want to talk about if we think any of these teams will make it or if they're going to fall off, what our thoughts are. So we are going to start with Connor's Charlotte Hornets here.
Yeah.
And so I will just go first, and I'm going to go with contender. What about you, Connor?
I am going to agree and go with contender for the Charlotte Hornets.
All right. So, Connor, since this is your squad, give us your reason why the Charlotte Hornets can be the real deal.
For me, it's just all about, I think they're going to put it together this year. Like, they're going to finally, they kind of went through a cold slump, but they did manage to beat the Warriors. So it tells me, they can beat these better teams if they play well. And it's just I think just the key for them this season is just going to be to stay healthy, because I think we saw a little bit last year, what they could do when they stayed healthy. But then, once Gordon Hayward and LaMelo Ball both got hurt, then they started, and Devontae Graham, they started falling out and losing a lot of games. So, as long as Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, LaMelo Ball, all of those 4 guys need to all stay healthy. And which is, obviously, I'm not expecting them to stay healthy for the entire season just because, it's a long season. People are going to get hurt. It's just the reality of things. But, they just need to – all those guys need to play together more than they don't play together. And I think the Hornets have a really good shot. Like I said, they've shown that they can put it together. And, their players, their games are evolving, I think, is the key to what's happening with the Hornets. Miles Bridges has gotten really good as a deep shooter, which really wasn't part of his game a couple of years ago. We kind of always, I know this isn't a fair comparison, but we always talked about Giannis. If he could ever develop a deep shot, it would make him an unstoppable player. And, maybe Miles Bridges is a little baby Giannis, but who's actually started to develop a deep shot. And, he's a tall guy. He has a monstrous drive to the basket. He has some monster dunks that I've seen him do, dunking over people. And, but now he's got that deep shot. So now it gives him that room to be able to drive to the basket. Gordon Hayward's obviously a sharp shooter. LaMelo Ball, I would like to see him be more consistent with his scoring, but, he's a great facilitator. So as long as he can keep that up, then, that's kind of all he really needs to do, I guess, with the other pieces on this team. Just, facilitate and, maybe grab a rebound or 2, and he should be fine. the biggest key for them going forward, obviously, in my opinion, is going to be just the play of their big men. Because, if you look at this team, that's definitely the weakness. Mason Plumlee and Jalen McDaniels and, Kai Jones don't really scare anyone. So it's really just going to come down to they're kind of going to be going with this kind of like Houston Rockets style of offense in the sense that like it's going to be a smaller lineup. But so far it's been working, and I think it can work. It might change when it comes to the playoffs, but we'll evaluate that if they get there. But for right now, the Charlotte Hornets look to me like they're the real deal, and they're going to keep it up.
Yeah, I didn't know how long you were going to go there, but I had a couple things I was going to say, but then you nailed them all. So I guess my only thing that I'll add is just they've had some flashes of inconsistency, like how they started off the season really hot, but then they lost a few games and went below 500. But now they're on a big streak again, and they had that bad loss to the Rockets, but other than that, they've been pretty hot, and they're back, a few games above 500 again. So if they can just not, obviously teams are going to win and lose and be up and down in the NBA. It's a 82-game season, but I just want to see them not have as, if they start to have a little bit of a losing streak happen, to, get it back together quicker and, start playing to their potential again and get it back. If they can do that, then I do think the Charlotte Hornets, they could definitely make the playoffs and have a nice run if they can keep that up. So again, another team here in the East that is definitely surprising everybody. Probably the most surprising so far, in my opinion, would be the Washington Wizards. So we'll discuss here, but I'm going to say pretender. What about you?
I am going to agree and say pretender.
Yeah, so the Wizards are playing really well right now. Like the additions they brought in from the Lakers have been doing, like with Kuzma and
KCP.
Yeah, KCP. Like my brain's been kind of slipping here, but it's been a long podcast. But and obviously they got Bradley Beal, who was a superstar. But I don't know, their run to me has felt a little more fluky compared to some of the other teams that have been hot to start the season. Like I remember there was one year a few years ago where the Magic started off like 10-2 or something like that, and then they ended the season like 20-62 or something like that.
Now they had like a top five draft pick.
Yeah. Now I don't think that's going to happen for the Wizards, but I just don't see them maintaining this level of success. I don't know. I just don't see them keeping this up. But so Connor, you agree with me here? Do you have anything else to add about the Wizards?
Yeah, you pretty much hit it. It's just for me, Bradley Beal's obviously really good. He's been playing well, but it's just like the team around him just does not inspire confidence in me at all. Like Kuzma, KCP, Montrezl Harrell, all those guys they got from the Lakers. They're very, very sus players. And then if I look at the rest of their players, I haven't even heard of I'm not the biggest basketball follower, so I haven't even heard of Daniel Gafford, whoever this guy is.
Yeah.
So, and he's supposed to be their starting center basically. So, I don't know. There's nothing about this lineup inspires confidence in me at all. So I feel like this team's going to fall off. I think Bradley Beal's still obviously going to be good, but he can't take them. He's not a Giannis or a Kawhi Leonard, one of those players that could really just carry a team. I don't think he can do that.
Yeah, and the thing, this is definitely a better supporting cast than they've had in previous seasons. There have been times where outside of Bradley Beal and John Wall, I didn't even know who anybody was on the team,
and even then, John Wall was hurt.
Yeah, and then they had Russ last year, but he was only there for the one season. And with these three, especially with these three Lakers guys, they did a lot of this in LA as well, where they'd go on these flashes where they would play KCP would hit every three, and Kuzma would get 20 points, and Harrell would do some damage in the paint, but then they would go games. They'd have games where did they show up to the arena? Were they even there? KCP would be 1 of 8 from 3, and Kuzma would only play 5 minutes, and you did. So it's just I'm waiting for that version of those guys to step up, and I think that's what will hurt the Wizards going forward. So I'm cool with the Wizards. I like Bradley Beal. I would be cool if they do become a contender, but I just don't believe in it right now. And so then finally, another team in the East that is off to a pretty good start. They haven't been this good in a while. The Chicago Bulls. I am going to go contender. What about you, Connor?
I am gonna agree and go contender.
All right, we've been in unanimous agreement here. For me,
This
like,
isn't you. This isn't me and Zach. So
yeah,
clearly,
oh
there's
yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
more
you and
agreement
Zach
than disagreement.
Zach probably disagrees with us on all three of these,
I don't know about
but
that, but
maybe not. But for me, we just talked about the additions that the Wizards brought in and how we don't trust them. Like the additions that the Bulls brought in have really made a big difference. I mean, obviously Vucevic was there last year, but he didn't come in until like right at the trade deadline. I don't think he'd had enough time to really gel with the team. But now that he's had an off season and this is his first full season with the Bulls, and DeMar DeRozan's been a nice addition for them, and even Alex Caruso has played surprisingly well. But he's another one like those Lakers guys. I don't know if I fully trust him yet. But with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, like this is a pretty good squad. And the East is so up and down. I mean, they're kind of like the AFC of the NFL. I mean, where it's almost like a crapshoot at times. I could definitely see the Bulls doing some damage here. Do you have any other thoughts on the Bulls, Connor?
yeah, I mean, well, the one thing that gives me, probably more hope for them also that I like is that, I feel like even though I'm not the biggest fan of, of him, I like their point guard combo with Lonzo Ball and Kobe White. Like, I think they're both,
Oh yeah, sure. I didn't even think I forgot about Lonzo Ball.
yeah, that's the thing. Like Lonzo, they're both decent young players. I mean, Kobe White's still, you know, he's starting to come into his game. He's still really young. Like he just turned 21 not long ago. And I mean, like if my thing is like I know they spent a lot on Lonzo Ball, but I would really like to see for them to give Kobe White more minutes because I think they played well last year with him. And I think he's got that chemistry with Zach LaVine. But Lonzo Ball's played well. The key for him is just don't screw anything up. And like I think he needs to avoid these games like he had, the other night against the Heat where he took like 11 3-pointers and he only made 3 of them. It's like, okay, he needs to avoid games like that because it's, the Bulls lost that game. So I think he needs to try and stick to more of like the role that LaMelo's playing in Charlotte right now. Just be a facilitator. LaMelo's obviously a better scorer. But like, he just needs to not try and take over the game because it's not going to work. Like, get it to DeRozan, get it to Vucevic, get it to guys who actually can take over a game if they get going. So, I think really, if he does that, then this team is scary to me. Like I said, that point guard combo is good, but if he tries to start taking over games, then that's going to be where the Bulls are going to falter compared to some of these other teams.
Yeah, I got you, man. I agree with that 100%. We're going to move to the Western Conference now. So in the West, these teams have been surprising for a different reason. I mean, these are teams that have been deep in the playoffs. Won a championship. Not even that long ago, but they're off to a slow start. So with these teams, it's more so can they bounce back and be a contender, or are their records really who they are, and are they really a pretender? So we're going to start with the Los Angeles Lakers, and unfortunately, I have to say it, but I'm going to say contender.
I'm going to go with pretender.
All right, cool. We have a disagreement here. So my thing about the Lakers is they overall still have a good amount of talent on this team, and they've had a lot of injuries to start off with. Like LeBron's missed time, and AD's been hurt at times, and he's been playing at not 100%. I don't necessarily think this is a championship team. Like I'm not saying that. I don't trust them to be at that level, but kind of like what I talked about when we did the NBA season preview, you know, a lot of these teams you can make a case of why they could make it to the finals and why they'll be terrible. I mean, it's so up and down, but I just believe with the overall experience that the Lakers have, with the veterans they have on this team, I think they're still, they brought in a lot of new players. And so I think they're still just trying to figure it all out. And especially with them having a lot of injuries at the start, that kind of affected their rotations that they were planning on going with. And I just think that messed things up. But assuming, they get fully healthy and everything, I still think the Lakers are going to be a pretty good squad. I think they can make it deep in the playoffs. Now, if they end up being a pretender, like Connor says, I'm not going to be upset about that at all. So I just want that to be on the record. But so Connor, since you think the Lakers are a pretender, let us know why you think that.
For me, it's just basically, I think, this is a team full of, I talk about to joke about the Ravens running backs are a retirement home. This is the retirement home of the NBA. LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, DeAndre Jordan, Dwight Howard, Rajon Rondo, all these people that are 35 years and older, are on this team. Russell Westbrook's not quite that old, but he's definitely getting close to that range.
Okay.
So
he's in his low 30s though.
That's what I'm saying. He's definitely getting close. The only young guy on this team still would basically be Anthony Davis. But I don't know. It's just, to me, with all these old guys on the team, if they're already struggling like this, then I feel like it's just going to get worse. I still think they can make the playoffs, but you see it with these veteran teams. They start to slow down towards the end of the season. It's a long season. It's a long grind. Their bodies can't handle it like they used to. And like I said, if they're already struggling, I just foresee worse things later in the year, unless Anthony Davis can really stay healthy. Then and that's really the main key for them is Anthony Davis, because when he's not in the game, they struggle really hard. And LeBron and Russell Westbrook don't play together well. I think we've seen it already. Their play styles don't mesh. They're both ball hogs. They both need to have the ball, and they're both terrible shooters. It's just a recipe for disaster. So, I think they could sneak into the playoffs, or they could be maybe an 8. I think they'll be in the play-in tournament, if I have to say, since they're keeping that. I think they'll be between that 7 and 10 range, but the West, in my opinion, is still just too good. And if, like I said, I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, but if they're already struggling, it's just going to get worse, especially with the division they're in, with how well the Warriors and the Suns are playing. They got to play them more times this year. And, I can foresee pretty well all those games easily being L's against those teams, because they are some of the best teams in the league right now. So the road's not going to get any easier, especially when, they lost to the Kings, a couple nights ago, and they've struggled with the Pistons both times they've played them, which is you're struggling with the Pistons, really. So, I don't think the Lakers are going to go far this year.
Well, Connor, I hate to break it to you, but I have a counter argument here, and that is that not only do the Lakers have one of these, but they have 2 triple-double machines on that roster. So, get ready to see
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah, you're probably I'm surprised he didn't mention that in his argument initially, but yeah,
triple-double.
Yeah, so
Eric's favorite stat of all time.
Oh, yes. When you're looking at a reason why any team wins games, first thing you got to look at is the triple-double, or if they don't get a triple-double, do they get close to the triple-double? That's the difference. So full on sarcasm if you didn't catch that. But anyway, so the last team is going to be the Denver Nuggets. And I know it looks like they've been without Jokic, but they've been struggling really bad lately. Let's see. I had this up on Google here a second ago. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, they've lost 6 games in a row, and I don't know, but yeah, they've been without Jokic, so that makes it a more interesting scenario here. But I am going to go pretender. What about you, Connor?
This is a tough one, but I do think I'm going to have to agree and go pretender with the Nuggets.
Yeah, I feel like, for me, I feel like the Nuggets have had their chance, but then just not been able to, they weren't able to fully take advantage of it when they had the chance. And I don't know, they've just been flat this year. Even before Jokic got hurt, they weren't doing that great. They were doing, better than they're doing now, obviously, but I don't know, man. Their defense is not good, and I felt like they made a bad move when they acquired Aaron Gordon last year. He's too inconsistent of a player for me. I don't know, man. I don't like this Nuggets team compared to some of the other teams in the West. I don't know. Like honestly, as much as I dislike the Lakers, like I would take the Lakers over them. I'd definitely take the Warriors and Suns over them. Then maybe some of these other teams that are maybe more even, like the Mavericks or Blazers, I'd probably take. I just don't trust this Nuggets team enough. Now I feel like they could prove me wrong, obviously, because there's a reason why we're talking about them, even though they're struggling, is still potentially being a contender. But for me personally, I'm just not feeling the Nuggets. What about you, Connor?
Yeah, I kind of see them in the same light as I see the Lakers. Like, I definitely could see. I mean, not obviously they're not the same team, but I definitely see them in the sense of like I see them getting into the play-in tournament, and then like I honestly think they'll get beat in the play-in tournament. Or if they do make it, then they're going to end up losing to like Golden State or Phoenix in the first round, like, and it won't be close. So yeah, it's just this team. I mean, even more so than like you talk about the Lakers, having a problem with injuries. Like the Nuggets look really bad without Jokic. Like it's like without him. I mean, this team is looking like it's like what would have happened like in 2017, that year that like LeBron like just straight carried the Cavs. Like it kind of seems like that how it would be this year for the Nuggets. Like if they get far, I think Jokic can carry them places, but he's not going to carry them, not in the Western Conference. Like I think LeBron was able to do that with the Cavs that year because they're in the East, but in the Western Conference they're not going to do that. Like they're, even if it's not Golden State or Phoenix, like at some point they're going to run into someone like the Jazz or the Trailblazers or even someone like the Grizzlies. I think could beat them. So it's really tough. It is. I mean, because I know, especially when we're talking about the Lakers and Nuggets, like all of us, if we go back to our season preview, like we all had these guys in the Western Conference Finals, and now it's just like we're like questioning all of our decisions a month ago. Now that we're looking at this season,
already.
yeah. So, yeah, I think. I just think if when Jokic comes back, I think they'll be better, but I don't see things going good for them going forward unless they can like. I mean, I know Jamal Murray is still hurt. Unless they can somehow get him back and like him kind of start looking like his old self, and they can get that going again. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and that's going to be the end of the episode here. But let us know in the comments, like I talked about with the NFL. If you agree or disagree with our picks there, like let us know if you agree or disagree with our contenders and pretenders here for the NBA. If you agree, that's cool. Or even if you think we're really stupid, like that's cool too. We don't care. Let us know. We want to interact with y'all. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I know this one went a little long. I guess I prepared a little too much content, but it was a lot of good stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with another episode. So until then, for Zach, be clutch.
And for Eric, peace.
Hello.